Good morning, Dan and Amy. Who does the Mr. Smith Goes to Washington impersonation better, Jim Comey or Tony Fauci?
I think Tony Fauci.
I think Tony Fauci does too, because I think he comes off, even though it's fake, I think he comes off as more sincere than Jim Comey, who's just so oleaginous.
Yeah, Jim Comey's, well, they're both have egos, but Fauci controls it in a different way, a more humble Midwestern way. I don't know if that makes sense.
That's what he tries to do. Yeah, no question. And so when he's asked by Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana if he thinks the Chi-Coms would lie to him, he does the, well, golly gee, Senator.
So you don't think the Chinese would lie to you?
Well, when you say the Chinese are a rather broad group. I know the scientists that we've dealt with have been trustworthy.
Mm-hmm. You think all the scientists have told the truth in terms of the origin of the Wuhan virus and not been influenced by the Communist Party of China, do you?
I don't have enough insight into the Communist Party in China to know the interactions between them and the scientists, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
He's a trusting fella, Tony Fauci.
Except you trust them. Is that right?
Well, we generally always trust the grantee to do what they say, and you look at the results.
Have you ever had a grantee lie to you?
I cannot guarantee that a grantee has not lied to us because you never know.
Yeah.
You never know. But he doesn't want to think bad about those Chinese communist-sponsored scientists who he's friends with. Gosh.
Who we give money to.
Gosh, Senator, I never thought about it that way, but I guess anything's possible. I sure hope these gentlemen and gentle ladies would be honest with me. I got a default to trusting them. And, his trusting nature, Tony Fauci's, it certainly extends to the World Health Organization, too, and Dr. Tedros. Listen to his characterization of the WHO Director General under questioning.
Can we agree that if you took President Xi Jinping and turned him upside down and shook him, the World Health Organization would fall out of his pocket?
I don't think I can answer that question, sir. I'm sorry.
You're funny.
Do you think that the President Xi Jinping has undue influence over the World Health Organization, do you?
I have no way of knowing the influence of the president of China over the WHO.
Okay, so you think the WHO is a completely independent body, level playing field, call it like you see it, and they really want to get to the bottom of the origin of the virus. Do you believe that?
My interaction with the WHO and for Dr. Tedros, the Director General, has been one that I do believe he's a person of high degree of integrity.
Mm-hmm. So he trusts the Chinese communist-sponsored scientists, but he has no opinion on the Chinese communist influence, the state influence, even though this is a man with an opinion on everything from baseball to his actual alleged area of expertise, infectious disease. Over the last year, we've seen that. He also has no opinion about Chinese communist influence of the World Health Organization, but he characterizes Dr. Tedros as somebody he trusts as well. This is Dr. Tedros, who was backed by the Chinese government during his campaign for the job. He was dogged by allegations of having covered up cholera outbreaks in his native Ethiopia, where he was a health minister and foreign minister. During those years, when he was in those posts, the Chinese communists invested in Ethiopia, lent it billions of dollars. Shortly after winning the election to be the WHO Director General, Tedros said of the Chinese communists, "We can all learn something from China," talking about their healthcare system. That's who Dr. Fauci referred to as a person of a high degree of integrity. It's really a trusting sort, that Fauci. For more on this and other COVID-related matters, we're pleased to be joined again by Jeffrey Tucker, the editorial director for the American Institute for Economic Research and the author of The Market Loves You, Why You Should Love It Back, and AIER. If you haven't read that outlet, please do read it. It really has been, if not the indispensable outlet, certainly one of the top outlets during the pandemic in terms of the quality of research and analysis on all aspects of the pandemic. Jeffrey Tucker, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Sure, it's good to be here. Thank you.
What about Dr. Fauci's testimony yesterday and sort of the last couple of weeks folding in the controversy over whether or not we're providing funding for gain of function research for the Chinese
Well,
communists as well?
Yeah, he's been sort of doing this game for a year and a half, really his entire career. Just in a compelling way, saying whatever truths he feels like he should say that day, even if he contradicts himself that evening, that next morning, or the next week. I mean, that's been his whole career. I mean, he doesn't believe in the truth. He doesn't read the science. He loves just to be a media star more than anything else. And I've watched this go on for a year and a half, and this COVID thing, it's like, oh, this isn't a big deal, or it seems like it's just the flu. Well, maybe there's going to be a 4% death rate. Oh, that's too high. It's going to be less than 1%. But you don't need to wear a mask. Oh, you have to wear a mask. Now you have to wear 3 masks. I mean, he's been doing this.
Well, what do you think?
It's true. Yeah. Go ahead.
It even gets worse. Like, do you remember it was just like a month ago, the CDC decided, they're putting down the vaccines. Like, well, just because you're vaccinated doesn't mean you can really go back to normal. Because, under the influence of zero COVID, they really, really want government controls of your life. And they didn't want vaccines to somehow emancipate people from their despotism. So they were telling vaccinated just to behave as if they're just as diseased and poisoned as everybody else. And at some point, Rand Paul was like, this is idiotic. Like, why would a person get vaccinated if you're just as, much a vector of disease, before and after? How is this even possible? And at some point, that contradiction began to occur to the CDC. So they really just like overnight said, we got a problem. Vaccines are falling. The number of people who are interested in vaccines are really kind of off the cliff here. We kind of want to get everybody vaccinated. We've got to change the story.
Mm-hmm.
So they did. They said, now if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask. The science has changed. Wait, what science? Well, the New England Journal of Medicine. I looked it up. It was the 18th study saying that the variants are less, far less deadly than the original. And that was the science-based. And so they changed their line. And sure enough, Fauci, the very next day, after having just said, don't take off your mask, whatever you do, leave it on. I wouldn't go to the store if I were you. It was suddenly on national television going, oh, yeah, no, you don't need a mask.
I know. It's like makes your head spin, honestly. Well, what do you think is the most...
And he was smiling, confident.
Oh, I know.
Wait a minute. You don't need a mask if you're vaccinated. No, don't wear a mask. And he was actually saying this is one day to the next.
Well, they needed an incentive to get people vaccinated, because why would you get vaccinated if you continue living this, mask hell that we're in right now, that we're still in Chicago?
And then they found themselves really in a pickle, because they said, well, you have to be vaccinated in order to take off your mask. But the children, there's no vaccines for these kids, so they have to keep wearing masks. Well, that really upset a lot of people. It's like, you really don't want to send your fourth grader to school in a mask all day. It's really disorienting. It sends a very creepy message to them that their breath is poisonous and all their friends are diseased and so on. It's a creepy way to grow up. But that was kind of the logical implication of the CDC's announcement about masks, is that, well, if you're not vaccinated, you still have to wear them. The kids aren't vaccinated, so they have to wear them. So that really upset a lot of people.
But even outside now, because now I see more kids outside masked up than ever before, because Fauci said yes, because Savannah Guthrie said, so I'm vaccinated and I'd pick up my kid from the school bus, but she has to wear a mask home and I don't. And he said yes, which is ridiculous. I parent my own children differently. I don't let them wear masks. We never have worn masks outside, ever.
No, right. It's just a great example that, so the cruelty of adults and their intellectual pretensions and their sort of media-driven desire for, a consistent line of the day. And next thing you know, you're sacrificing a whole generation, at the altar of their disease mitigation strategies. It's really despicable. Fortunately, many governors are now, I love it, but I think there's maybe like a half a dozen states in which, there have been these executive orders saying you cannot force masks on children. Just get them off. Yeah. So that's been fun. That's been fun to watch. But anyway, you started off this thread by asking about Fauci's testimony. And it's fascinating to me after a whole career of this kind of, this sort of moving about and shifting his position and sort of dissembling in a sort of unrelenting, duplicitous way, that now he seems to be getting caught on the Wuhan lab question because
Yeah.
he flat out denied it. But even his denials were sort of suspicious. You know how we listen to him? He's like, the U.S. taxpayer did not directly fund. It's like, wait a minute. When you say directly fund, you mean possibly indirectly funded, or we never set out, to fund, gain of function. Well, it could have been funded without your knowledge, and so he seems like he knows more than he's saying, but it's hard to know for sure, right? Because he's just so
Well, he wants to be surprised when, if and when the truth comes out that is anticipated, and be aghast as well. He wants to be Captain Renault. There was gambling going on. Oh my God, this is terrible. I feel just as badly as you do, the rest of America, when ultimately this comes out. And like they lied to me. I trusted them and they lied to me. He'll be a victim.
Oh, I guess you're right. He's probably setting himself up for that. I'm not sure exactly why. You know how it is with these government careers. People get mad, but then they finally do some one thing that like tips them over into the abyss.
Yeah.
And that seems to be what's happening with Fauci right now. I do have friends of mine. I had friends of mine who are very, very closely in touch with the sort of public health community and the CDC and the epidemiological establishment that's watching all this stuff very carefully. And he told me about 6 weeks ago, he said, the lockdowners are all going to be discredited, but they need somebody's head on a platter.
Yeah.
Sort of in that sort of John the Baptist Salome way.
Yeah. Fauci is ready-made for that, isn't he? Because
that's what my friend said. My friend said, that it's going to be Fauci, and he said that's kind of slightly unjust in a way, because it's true that he was the front man, but there was a whole machine that was going on here. So
well, sure, but I mean, politicians being the cowards that they are, generally speaking, of course, I relied on the experts. I never held myself out as an infectious disease expert. I relied, and now I feel slighted. I feel lied to by Tony Fauci, even though these were the biggest cheerleaders and the most ghoulish proponents of lockdown as well. I mean, you could always tell some public health functionary no, but very few governors or public or elected officials chose to do that.
Did you happen to watch the? I'm playing up what you said about these people running for that. I watched Sean Hannity held a debate where a kind of a town hall with something like 6 governors last night.
Right.
And it was pretty interesting. There were only 2 people on the stage that actually consistently opposed lockdowns, right? So it was like Kristi Noem and Ron DeSantis.
Right.
Yeah, and Reynolds was there.
But this guy from Tennessee, I forget his name now, acted as if he was anti-lockdowns. Oh no, gotta have open business, open. Following science, these means letting people have rights. Well, for a year, this guy shut down music in Nashville.
He sure did.
And with mask mandates, and he was the worst lockdowner. But now, boy, you listen to him talk. He was never for lockdowns. He's always been a good, keep the state open kind of red state guy. It's so we're gonna have to do some serious research, hold these people to account.
Oh yeah. Well, the mayor of Nashville, didn't he write an email, member, during the summer saying, our numbers are better, but we don't want people to know that because we want to.
Yeah, there was internal communications, but that's a Dem. I mean, Bill Lee is a Republican, and you're right, Jeffrey. This is and look, Greg Abbott in Texas. He's really aggressive now, but he wasn't heroic during much of the lockdowns. He was a little bit more aggressive than he should have been too. So, you're absolutely right. And I think what they see is that those who were responsible for lockdowns and responsible for now the long tail of the consequences of lockdowns are going to pay a price. And one of the long tails is I'm not talking about dollars and cents here. I'm talking about what we've been talking about since the beginning: lives versus lives. And this comes out of Children's Hospital of Colorado. declaring a state of emergency in pediatric mental health this week. The CEO of that hospital saying she's been overrun with kids attempting suicide, suffering from other forms of major mental health issues. The chief medical officer there saying that our kids have run out of resilience. Their tanks are empty. They're trying to increase their capacity for inpatient, outpatient, and day services for children by more than 50% between now and March of next year. That's the demand they're facing.
We had the same problem in every state.
Yeah. And it's overwhelming, the human cost of this, the mental health crisis, the substance abuse, the 50% decline in cancer screenings. I mean, we're going to be dealing with this stuff for years to come. And it's interesting. I've been recently focused on the economic fallout of this, which is also overwhelming, actually. I don't know if you've been out car shopping recently in Chicago, but you can't. There aren't even new cars or used cars around. I mean, It's very difficult. The lots are empty. And I couldn't figure out why. Well, I did a deep dive yesterday and looked into it. I mean, look, the answer will not shock you. It was that, the lockdowns made demand collapse last spring, and then all the manufacturers, having a just-in-time inventory policy, canceled all the orders for microchips. And then when demand picked up in the fall, they went to order them. They said, hey, give me that 50-cent thing so I can ship my car off to the dealer. And the makers in Hong Kong, Taiwan, and China said, actually, we sold those already to people for their Xboxes and extra laptops that they ordered. Zoom classes got very high demand for these things, And so all the factories had meanwhile been retooled away from the chips that would make the cars run to chips to make the refrigerators go and your laptops run fast and your game boards work and all that sort of thing, because it was a dramatic shift, and the manufacturers just made a kind of, I guess you would say, like sort of error, but they were adhering to a pre-lockdown protocol concerning just-in-time inventory. Basically, and now here we are, in late May 2021, you can't buy a car, and you can't buy a used car, or if you can find one, you're going to pay 20% more than you did before. These are the kinds of dislocations that are taking place.
Absolutely.
Economic injustice. Yep.
Jeffrey Tucker, editorial director for the American Institute for Economic Research, author of The Market Loves You, Why You Should Love It Back. Jeffrey, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And real quick, Dan, we have the Ohio Vax-A-Million winner. Her name is Abigail Bagensky. She's a young engineer, and a 14-year-old Joseph Costello won, and he wants to go to either University of Dayton or Ohio State. Isn't that great? Doesn't that motivate you to want to go get a vaccine?
It's so lame, and Mike DeWine should be embarrassed by that.
And our guest joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's news, opinion, insight. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
This is Sean Thompson, and if you're like me, you prefer to do business with like-minded business owners. That's why I want to tell you about BuyingRight.com. BuyingRight.com is a brand new crowdsourced business directory and social networking site. It connects conservative-leaning